The year is 2020. The world has been ravaged by an extraterrestrial invader named COVID, who conquers planets by spawning disease, depression, fear, and anxiety. As society falls into ruin, the clarion call goes out for divine masculines to activate.
Yeah.
What it do?
What up, world?
We're back.
Again.
In the same place.
Like we left some.
You know, different time though.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats.
Chickens. Children and babies.
In the mortal words of Manny Fresh.
Right.
But no, welcome back to another episode of the Divine Masculine Activated. I am Cortni Grange.
JD Weatherspoon.
Where we broach all things relevant to the tools, boundaries, and mechanisms necessary to activate your divine masculine energy without sacrificing your divine feminine energy as well. We are here.
That is an important detail.
Ta-da.
Yeah, so I know last time we got into, the basics of WTF is a DMA. Quick recap. It essentially is everything he said in that 2 sentences, but it is someone who understands the foundational perspectives on which you construct your life and, your beliefs or your systems, religions. We'll get into that today. While maintaining the harmony with your inner feminine, because that is a detail that guys have, which we'll also discuss today, because we got some juice on motorcycles. We got isms and schisms.
Yeah. So just so we make it plain and clear, the Divine Masculine Activated is for everyone. So regardless of your gender pronouns, sexual orientations, ways that you show up in the world, we all have masculine and feminine energy inside of us. And so the journey to mastering ourselves is figuring out how we balance that energy, when to activate one versus the other.
Yes.
And when to do nothing, right? And step away from both. Simply to assess how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's processing through your internal, so that you can externally also be your best self.
Which in and of itself is a form of enacting feminine energy. But yo, cars got brakes for a reason. So with that being said, I know this is going to be a bit easier for us because we got a script because you wrote it. # cheap plug. It's on Medium.
Be prepared.
Be prepared. So 5 things to consider before mastering yourself.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, if you have questions along the way, please drop them. We can see your comments or your questions coming in, so we will be able to address them. Our goal is after each topic we go through to take a little bit of questions, have some dialogue with you all. Hopefully, right, take a few pivots so that we can get deeper into a topic that we find popularity amongst the collective. And yeah, we will float and roll and flow because
that's what we're here for.
That is what we are here for.
And also, where are we going?
Where are we going to go, right? I mean, we could get some more juice.
We can always get more juice.
There's a lot of it. It's right here. I'm not going to talk to y'all about it yet.
You got the juice now.
Shout out to my elder who came through with the elixir of fixers. So thank you.
Yeah, and then also shout out to Afrohemian
Karma Nutra, Afrohemian on Instagram. The company is Karma Nutra, who came out with these dope tats and tea mugs that you will see us having.
And then shouts out to Broski Mark Gunn at Year of the Gun for the t-shirt because it says arrogant on it, and I just like to push people's buttons, so I put it on a t-shirt.
And meanwhile, since we're bigging up brands, shout out to the whole Power in One family. If the Revolution had a clothing line,
this would be
it. And also, as you can see, we don't need their approval.
We don't.
Right.
So moving forward. So step number 1. So out of the 5 things to consider before mastering yourself, we have number 1, which is how do you create belief? It's right there on the screen.
Yeah,
other side. And so beliefs, as I touched on earlier in the stream, they are the systems. For all intents and purposes, in DMA, when we say religions, consider religion synonymous with system. That is, your frequency. It is your duration. It is
Structure.
Your intensity, it's everything. It's pretty much like a workout and a curriculum put together.
Word. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So when we look at how do you create belief, it stems from really three variables, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have belief that is created from what you think, belief that is created from what you feel, and then there's belief that is created from a different source, higher or something outside of yourself that you know is not influenced specifically by another human being. So when we look at the belief that's created from your intellect, from your thoughts, it's very logical. It makes sense. It incorporates all the ones and zeros. It's that space of numbers never lie. However, the challenge with it is that it lacks empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you do all of your belief constructing from what you read, what you process, and what you study, you will be a very mechanical man, as Bruce Lee would say, right? And so the second system, or the second way that you create belief, is through what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
This one is much more volatile because we know emotions are volatile, right? They go up, they go down, they do whatever they want to do, right?
Well, emotions are motion.
Man,
they
you're
move.
good at this stuff. Emotions are motion. So think about that, right? If you have a belief that is created based on how you feel, it may lack a certain amount of situational awareness. It may lack a certain amount of accountability or responsibility because how we feel doesn't necessarily equate to what we are responsible or accountable for.
More on that.
Right? But mostly when it comes to belief that is created based on how you feel, it's going to often put you in a position where you have to make additional steps, right? You may have to move around something because you came into contact with it very, very, very abruptly.
That's that static we referenced in episode 1.
That's static. And then lastly, and this is the one that from a perspective of what you need to be involved with regarding mastering yourself, is belief that comes from a higher source. This is where we get into discernment, or we get into intuition. Right. So those two things are, for the most part, right, belief that comes from a higher power. Now, if your intuition is clouded by your emotions, or your discernment, or clouded by your logic,
diet,
or your diet, or your sleeping patterns, or your familial relationships, or your intimate relationships, these things will take very different turns, right? And so you may have met somebody who considers themselves an empath, or you may be an empath. An empath by nature has a highly emotional center point, meaning where their core is constantly flowing with emotions, constantly. And it's not just their emotions. It can be others that come in. It could be situational emotions based on like what's happening in a crowd.
It can be the squirrel on the side of the road that got hit by a car.
Man, and all of a sudden it's just empathically moving through this individual. And so when you look at that person's ability, or your ability, if you are that person, because a lot of us have empathic natures, right? If you look at our ability as empaths to discern if this is a feeling, if this is what I'm thinking, or if this is truly something that is divine, a download, it gets hairy, right? It can get very, very staticky.
Yep. Well, it's currents. Motion of the ocean, right? Because
it's I'll get to that, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's all water, and this is
Let's see if we got anything in here.
Oh no, well,
I need that hoodie.
You ain't. We see you, Malik. We see you.
And belief can cure. I like that one. Yes. That's a big one. And belief. The reason belief is number one is because if you don't know what you believe, if you have not spent time constructing what you believe, not what was taught to you, not what you think you're supposed to believe, but truly finding that space of where you believe, right? You choose what your belief systems are. If you have not done that first, everything else that we're going to talk about today is going to be extremely challenging. Extremely challenging. So, great place to start.
Very good place to start. So, to give structure to this, right? We've discussed how belief can be adopted, how it can evolve, how it can be clean, and also how it can be messy. One way to keep it clean is to provide parameters, like we referenced with the shot clock.
That's it.
Right now, for all who don't really care about basketball, understand it. At one point, the NBA did not have The shot clock rule. So you could take all day to get from one side of the court to the other side of the court. Obviously, this made for a very boring game. Mm-hmm. The introduction of the shot clock meant that now you can do whatever, but you have, 24 seconds?
24 seconds.
To get it done. And that is how most of the dynamism that we know and associate with the game manifested itself. Yep. With your spiritual development, adding parameters is how you can create more dynamism. How you can create more dynamism. Facts. So, what are your principles? This is number 2.
Right. And this is my favorite. If you notice in episode 1, I said very clearly, I don't play with my principles. Mm-hmm. Play with everything else, but I don't play when it comes to my principles. Nope. And so number 2, as JD said, what are your principles? Give you a quick framing to put this together for you. Hopefully, if you have seen the movie 300, right? There's a scene where Leonidas is leading his men towards the battle, and they come across some other folks who are going to join them. Yep. And there's a bunch of them, right? Farmers, blacksmiths, all these different folks, potters who have joined together to fight. And there's thousands of them. Of course, 300 is all about the story of Leonidas and his 300 men. And so the leader of the folks that is joining them looks to Leonidas and says, how are we supposed to defeat this army? And you only have 300 men. And he's like, I don't have 300 men. You have thousands of men. You have potters, blacksmiths, all these different professions. Mm-hmm. What is our profession? Who? And you see that unison of like, this is our principle. This is what we do. We are not anything else other than warriors. Not saying that everybody has to be a warrior, but that level of discipline and focus,
there you go,
is what a principle is. So when you look at what are your principles, it is how you take your belief and show it in the world in action. Belief is nothing without principles, because principles are what hold you specifically accountable to what you say you believe in. Same as what we do.
Yeah.
Right. So if I say I believe in the power of the divine masculine, it is my principle to show up daily in a space that not only exudes that, but does it from a place of care and understanding for others as well. Right? You don't just walk around as a 300 warrior, as a Trojan, like slashing up mother suckers because you can. Spartan, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, but Trojans can be involved when you're irresponsible about it.
I'm gonna go and do another tangent.
Exactly. I know. That's why I stepped in. I'm like, you're going too far. Yeah. So principles, like, we like to refer to them as sort of the immutables, and that's not our lingo. We got that from, Kemetic study. Exactly. Yeah. 32 principles of Ma'at. And so, with that being said, your immutables do not move, right? In matters of fashion,
college words.
Exactly, right. In matters of fashion, like, you want to go with the flow. Yeah. In matters of principle, you stand firm, rock solid, right? My belief in like this, especially as it relates to accountability, is like, for me, part of my principles are like based on track record. And so accountability is quite literally like an account. And every time you say you're going to do something and you back that up, that's a deposit. Every time you come with some cap, that's a withdrawal.
The money coming out.
And it's like, you get all the slack that you need. Yeah. But when that account run out, well, you're liable to get hit with an overdraft fee. Like, you might want to cross the street next time. Like, it's all love, but from this far away.
Yeah. So frame that up very simply.
Yeah.
Everything that you say you believe in, look at it like a bank account. You got an account for how you treat your partner. You got an account for how you treat your family. You got an account for how you show up at work. You have an account for how you show up for yourself, your sleeping patterns, your eating patterns. Everything that you say you believe in has a bank account. As JD said, every time you are
fraudulent, like what Malik said, $35.
Overdraft fee, baby.
Run that bank. I need that bank
out of your account. Yeah. Every time you hold true to what you say you believe, money's going into your account.
Facts.
And you can look at it as that simple. So if you are exploring yourself and in this moment thinking, where do I sit on this construct of principle?
Yeah.
You probably are starting to understand where your bank account is at.
And it's fine. If you're starting off with Issa Rae Insecure Season 1 credit, that's all to the good. We got to start somewhere.
Because you see what happened in Season 2.
She moved up.
She is thriving. And not only thriving, she's holding principles. Shout out to her and Molly's ability to say, you know what? This no longer serves me.
Facts.
I love you from over there.
Growth with an F.
With an F. Growth. But now we're going to move it into, before we leave principles, right?
Yeah.
Because this, again, is my favorite. And so I'm going to give some quick nuggets for you to be able to research on how you can develop better principles. One is this book by Ray Dalio called Principles. It's an amazing, amazing deep dive on how to stay extremely principled in terms of what you do for your profession and your lifestyle.
I'm sorry, I'm dying. Andre is going in on these comments. Not basura, though?
Basura!
Okay, my bad. Ray Dalio. I had
Ray Dalio Principles.
Dre, we see you.
Another book that is, in all honesty, what I would consider masculinity 101, right?
Yeah.
So 101 meaning this is what you take freshman year. It is not what you should be focusing on when you graduate or when you go into your advanced degree paths.
Mm-hmm.
But masculinity 101, David Dita's Way of the Superior Man.
Facts.
It will open you up. It will open your eyes, and hopefully it will open your heart. The third book is The Untethered Soul. I think it's by Michael Singer, but that book for me was the first time I looked at my thoughts and my emotions and found a way to remove myself, to untether from them and be like, okay, cool. So that's how I feel. That's how I think. Cool. That's it. No action necessary. Or, cool, this is how I think and it aligns with my principles and it's backed up by my belief. Take action.
Yes.
Also with the emotions as well. So moving into topic number 3.
Currently, what do you put before self?
The reason this leads with currently, comma, because what you put before yourself is always going to change.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a child, I did childish things. When I became a man, I put childish things aside.
Until Saturday night. Then I'm back eating cereal.
Or Tuesday night.
Or Tuesday night,
Look,
exactly.
Let Jameson get the popping on a Wednesday. We playing. It doesn't matter what day.
It don't matter. It's a wrap.
But the currently part means that like you are going to continuously change. We all change. Every 7 years, chemically, we are a different human being. Our entire skin sheds away. We become different. And so if you are not constantly looking at what you put before yourself, you may find yourself principled by something that no longer serves you. See how these things start to flow together?
That's it.
Principles, what you put before yourself.
Exactly.
In the deeper part, go ahead.
No, you was doing your flow.
Sorry.
No, thank you for keeping me included.
I was like, not good with it.
I feel seen and loved.
But that part of what you put before yourself can be challenging, right? I'm a father, right? And a very proud father. And so for me to say that I put my principles before my child is something that would make the average person cringe. However, for me, I cannot show up fully as a father unless I fully show up in my principles. It's that concept of when you're on an airplane and they're giving you directions, please, ladies and gentlemen, put your mask on first before you put the mask on somebody else. You are unable to help others unless you can help yourself. This has been a PSA brought to you by the good brothers at Divine Masculine Activity.
The more you know.
The more you know, the more
we
you
really
grow.
We need animation.
But no, on a serious note, this one can get very challenging, right?
Extremely.
Especially for those of us that are already in a certain place. So this is why currently,
yes,
what do you put before yourself is the title of this. So you can start to assess it. Again, untethering is often important when it comes to these concepts. Before you make a decision, before you take an action, just assess, right? Take a listening tour, as they would say in youth development work. Walk around, talk to some people, take some notes. See what the data is showing you about your own life before you decide and say, okay, cool, right. So my partner, like, they be taking up too much of my time. You got to go to the back. No.
What does that mean? Yeah,
that's not what we're saying here. Your partner, whoever you are in union with on a regular basis, right? That's a totally different story. I'm going to slide that pendulum over here to a married brother because I am not. And so therefore I should not have a principle on me.
That was smooth. I like that. Caught that alley-oop. So the funny detail about that is, also, what's up, baby? One detail that my lady and I came to an understanding of without realizing that we understood it at the beginning of our relationship was like, ideally, I think coexistence in general, but definitely cohabitation has to be like in that sweet spot in the Venn diagram of selfishness and selflessness, to the point where it's like there should be, where we meet should be an overlap of what I want and need and what you want and need. I love you. I want to make you happy. Selfishly, I do that partially because seeing you happy makes me happy.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you're going to get this love.
You're going to get this love.
Call me whatever you want. I'll see you tomorrow. Bad. But you're going to get this love.
Yeah.
And I think with all relationships within a certain scope, of course, it's currently. Like if something is important enough to you that you put it before yourself within reason. And that reason could change weekly. Like, case in point, my lunar cycle just ended. Like I had zero I have like 5% bandwidth for other people and their needs. And that's as of this morning. Over the last 48, 72 hours, I could care less because I didn't have the bandwidth for it. And it's sort of on you to, this accountability part, it's on me to perform that assessment. My major detail when I'm running that observation is like, observe and acknowledge without necessarily investing. That's the untethered piece. It's like, yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And by the way, you can feel here and think here. You have a central nervous system in your head, your heart, and your stomach. So when they say go with your gut, you're literally thinking.
Wait, come back to that. Pull up.
Run it back, run it. Oh, wheel up.
Yeah. Say that again for the people in the back that might have missed.
Okay, so you have 3 central nervous systems, and this is me. Well, thank you, Omar. # Crash Bell.
Much love, brother.
Right? So in your head, your heart, and your stomach, you have 3 separate central nervous systems, and they're bundles of nerves. You can Google this yourself. This ain't cap. So when they say like follow your heart, well, your heart has a brain, your stomach has a brain. So when they say go with your gut, like your intuition, your stomach is thinking. The goal of like synchronicity and singularity is making sure that all 3 of these dynamics are in alignment. And that's what the observation is really, really for.
Knowledge without necessity.
She's repeating. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Rasha. Happy birthday. We love you.
Happy birthday, Rasha.
Right. Anyway, so like we were saying, so that's 3. 4, because we really got down a hole with that.
And this is the big body thing when we talk about these 5 concepts, because this brings the where everybody gets tripped up. Like if you walking down the street in the city and that one little brick is out, and you slip and you watching to see if anybody saw you, that's number 4, which is,
what is your religion?
Yeah. All right. So for framing, because we love rabbit holes, but only if you come down them with us. If you sitting up there watching us float down this rabbit hole and making assessments for what you saw at the surface, I'll get into that later. I'll save the quote that I was going to give for later. But basically what we're looking at with religion is spirituality is your intimate one-on-one relationship with the divine presence. Whatever it is for you. It is how y'all talk when y'all are in the bedroom together, when you are praying on your knees, when that emotion is rising up in you and you know it is nothing other than that. That is spirituality. It is something that needs no structure. It needs no bounds. And it increases in terms of its effectiveness and importance in your life the more you surrender to it. Just like a relationship.
Perfect. And to provide that alternative to the structure or principle, spirituality can change daily.
It should.
Exactly. It flows like the ocean. Absolutely. It don't need to make sense to nobody but you and whoever you commune with when you are in that space.
Now, religion. Religion is simply structure. It is when you say, okay, I want to be in a marriage with my spirituality. I want to be in a friendship with my spirituality. You set the parameter and then you give it a structure. So whatever your system of belief that has its own principles, right? That is also telling you what to put before yourself is simply your choice of structure. You can choose whatever you want to choose, B. You don't have to choose one.
# option C.
It's okay. And for those that don't understand option C, because we say it all the time,
exactly,
folks won't get it. When you're taking the standardized test, right?
A or B.
A or B is your normal choice of answers. True or false. There's normally never an option C, but there is in life. There is always an option C because you don't have to just because you were told to. This is where religion comes into play. So when we look at what is your religion, if your religion is constantly in polarity or in direct opposition, static with your beliefs or your principles, you likely should start to consider more about your religion. Not because your religion is bad, but maybe because the structure of it does not fit who you are becoming. Because we are always becoming. Again, the point of spirituality is that it's going to change every single day. So your religion should have space for it.
Yes, which includes your God, which I'm going to quote. What is her name? She wrote the artist, Julia Cameron. Yeah, so the way that she defines God is as an acronym, that is good orderly direction. And I think that's really the only definition we need for a God, so to speak. It is the way that you order your steps while you are on your path. So, just like on some Wu tip, like basic instructions before leaving Earth. You don't have to slit anybody's throat behind it. You just need to decide whether or not that's what you want to abide by and keep it moving.
So quick acknowledgement out to Noah, who posted a question. Why do we living things have to confine ourselves in a structure? It's a great question. And the answer is in the question, because we are living things. We are here in an existence where we are not only responsible for our own static, we are also responsible for how static from others comes at us. Take a look at your current TV screen and Instagram feed right now, and you will see a lot of static occurring because somebody chose to do something to somebody else and they had no business doing it. That's why the structure is important, because your structure, your religion, should be what holds that ass accountable when you want to put your knee on somebody's neck for over 8 minutes. And I'm gonna hold it there on purpose.
It was about to say, that's a good pregnant pause. I like that. That was a good pregnant pause.
But this is the point, or should be the point of religion. If your religion is based on your own accountability alone, like you're the only one that's holding you accountable, there's a lot of room for activities in that room.
Yes, but in theory, once you get evolved enough, like certain laws and mandates sort of need not exist because you know how to self-regulate. You only need laws and forces to reinforce these laws when you have an absence of true sovereignty. Yep,
that's back to Kant, right? Kant should be in a man's vocabulary when it is involving someone else. I can, however, I probably should not. I can't if I am overlooking somebody else's life, importance, way of thinking, way of feeling. I can't undermine somebody else in order to empower myself. So, Noah, that's why the constructs and the structure.
That was totally a rhetorical question, but we don't.
Right, because you put the word in there, I was like, cool. Let me give you some wisdom right back to what you gave us. So, thank you.
Disclaimer: both of us are notoriously bad at rhetorical questions, so keep that in mind.
And also, the answer to every question you will ever ask us will be you. You are the answer to your own question.
Or right? Yes.
Or yes.
That's my favorite answer.
So why should we go there? Yes.
Because why not? What else we got to do?
But religion, right? So before we get into number 5, just a quick recap for religion.
Yeah.
Spirituality is your intimate relationship with the Most High. Religion is simply the structure which you use to grow that relationship. It is up to you, or it should be up to you to determine the structures that you choose, whether it's one, whether it's many,
whether it's none.
Whether it's none, and you just want to float, that's up to you. But if your choice of religion, of structure, does not make you feel fully empowered to be your best self, or allows you the ability to harm other people at the expense, to harm other people in order for you to become your best self. Personally, from my opinion, and probably anybody else who's got half a brain and a third of a heart, that ain't something you should be rocking with. No. It is. So number 5.
All things in moderation, including moderation.
This is the foundation. This is the basement of sorts of this home that we have just built for you all with these 5 concepts.
Right.
Because everything we have just said should be taken into account in moderation. Don't jump out here and start trying to boil the ocean or eat an elephant. Because those are 2 things that nobody can do all at once.
Yeah. Yup.
But everything in moderation, including moderation, often speaks for itself. Because we know what moderation means. It means tact. It means the ability to turn the dial a little bit left or right as necessary.
You moderate and regulate. You don't need to regulate everything.
You don't.
No. And that's funny enough, that leads to another extreme, which ironically enough.
Absolutely.
Feel like the Chappelle show.
Or should I get the? Because that was my man too. What was his name? Shout out to Dave Chappelle, by the way. If you have not seen his latest YouTube stand-up, you need to go watch that thing immediately. It will change your life about comedy. And I personally will say that he has taken the mantle as the greatest comic of our time, simply because he could do what he just did.
He also is, I think I agree with Dane from Very Smart Brothers when he was like, his quote unquote blind spot on gender relations has gone from like, what was it? A crack to like a canyon. I was like, yo,
that escalated quickly.
And very quickly. It was like you saw it happen in the cage bird theory, but he took it and ran.
And now he's just sitting there like, I told y'all. And it's like, well.
He picked his one block that he was standing on. Also, do the chair down one more time. Do the wave.
Oh, man. Bring it back. Oh, snap.
Dre, that was for you. So you can't say nothing. But yeah, I think back to that, let's lock this in.
Yeah.
With the moderation piece, I think the need to control or regulate, this is another way of saying moderate, is an inherently masculine trait because masculine energy loves order. If I say be ready at 8, nothing is sexier than when my lady has her shoes on and when we are putting the car in drive at 8:05. Ain't nothing like some good time.
And see, this is probably where he talked about that Venn diagram, that space in the middle, right? Is 8:05. Because for me, if I say be ready at 8, ain't nothing more sexy than you being ready at 8:50. Excuse me, 7:50.
I said being in the car at it, putting the car in driving.
Yeah, I'm trying to be there at 8.
Oh, and that's why you still single.
That's why I'm learning, people. This is why I swung the pendulum to JD, because he has that gift and I am still searching.
Correction. God blessed us with CBD. And I've been a better man since.
Man, what we got here from my man Buddha? Oh, someone have a stand-up and be so successful in getting a serious point across. Yes. True. That's back to the Dave Chappelle piece, right?
Yeah, it is back to the Dave Chappelle.
Because real talk, it wasn't a stand-up. I'm going to just spill the beans for everybody.
That was a monologue.
There was maybe 2 funny things the entire time. Both of them were about Candace Owens, so I was completely for it.
He did thrash her.
He thrashed her in literally like 4.5 sentences and then got back to his point. But yeah, so the moderation piece fundamentally holds all this together, because if you are exploring what you believe.
Yes, and Don Lemon.
Oh, come at me, bro.
No, my bad. I should have said that. Finish your point. Land a plane.
If you are exploring what you believe and you think that you need to tackle all of that in a day, if you think that over the next some odd whatever time period you are in quarantine, it's a great time to restructure your belief system.
It is.
Use some moderation in that. Because there's also the test and trial aspect of all of this stuff. You got to test out your belief systems like you test out a car. You got to test out your principles like you test out a relationship. Yes, you should test your relationship before you actually jump in.
That's why they call it a Tesla.
They call it Tesla, baby. But even with principles, right, or any of these structures, principles, religion, belief, what you put before yourself, test it out. You might want to jump in there and say, I'm going to work out 6 days a week for 90 minutes a day. That may not necessarily work with the current structure of your life.
If you nail 1 week of that, I'm impressed.
Man, if I nail that, right, and I pretty much, you as well, right, like we hold pretty solid to wellness principles.
Facts.
And it's still a journey. And we don't beat ourselves up about it.
No more. It took a minute.
But that came from another principle, right?
Yes.
The principle of self-wellness had to be backed up by the principle of self-compassion.
Because you can't give everybody else compassion if you don't give it to yourself first. So, detail for anybody who seems like if you have somebody in your life that seems really hard on you, magnify that by 10, and that's probably how hard they are on themselves. So, like, give them a hug and tell them to be kind to themselves with that.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Or roll them a J or give them some Uncle Nearest.
Like they say, check in with your strong friends. As strong as you think they are in terms of supporting you, there's likely very few people that support them in the same way.
Exactly.
And they need that.
Yeah, and that's going to teach them moderation.
Yeah.
But now, with that being said, I think we pretty much done our curriculum. So,
like a real word.
If you got questions,
time 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It hurts my heart to say that time now. Like it still feels way too heavy. But yeah, I'm sorry. Y'all got questions?
We here.
We got a little bit more time to hang out with y'all, put some things into the universe. So let us know if any of these things are topics that you want to hear more about. If there's a question that you have relevant to religion, belief, principles.
Don Lemon.
Hey, Don. He's just doing his job.
He really is just doing his job. Malik needs to be like our all-time instigator for the comment section.
Man, constantly, Malik, please keep
oh
these
my
things
gosh,
coming.
this dude is like,
we
what?
absolutely love everything you are saying in these posts. I wanted another half hour of it. Don't worry, we'll be back.
I think he was talking about the Dave Chappelle piece. But
oh, that's fine. We'll be back too, right? And Dave will be back too, trust me.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, Rashad, can you give us examples of the work you both are doing related to religion, principles, and moderation? That's another 30 minutes. Of course you will.
You want to go first?
Okay, so starting with
religion.
Pick
one.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Pick
so
one, I'll pick one, and then we'll collectively do it.
So I like religion, and that's part of a, I think part of how I got here as far as like the DMA space was, for me, it was very much like a traveler perspective. Like my foundation is firmly Southern Primitive Baptist, because that's a detail, because regular Baptists didn't have to wash feet on Communion Sunday.
No, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about humility, right? I spent the first 17 years of my life washing old people's feet. It's sharecropper feet. Exactly. Let that marinate. But so like that gave me an understanding of deference, order, and community. That was my baseline. Everything else was as an adaptation. I started to look at the connecting details of like the big three religions, like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, because it's like it's a lot of overlap here if you actually read. And so once I figured out that there was what I saw to be a code of universalities between these three belief systems, it's like, well, from what I need, there seems to be a lot of fluff that doesn't actually serve me and all of these. So let me just trim that off and take these. And when you get to the core of it, it kind of is just like, don't be a jerk. Listen to people. Help the weak. Don't despise the poor.
Very basic human.
Exactly. Basic human
decency.
And so from that, it went to my belief system helping me identify the parts of myself that were missing as a result of like policy and history, hashtag the United States. And that's where
Malik is rolling, bro.
And using other people's hair to dry it off.
I'm trying to keep it level.
You're trying to keep it and using other people's hair to dry it off. I think that's a savage move.
That is it.
Hashtag other people's hair.
But no, so segue from that point, because exactly where JD left off is what I picked up with regards to my principles.
Exactly.
So as I started to take from the core of beliefs that I was given, I was raised devoutly Christian, Pentecostal for the most part.
Oh, y'all sanctified. You grew up speaking.
We get
fired.
Fire. Listen, my grandfather is a bishop, and he is one of the most principled men I have ever met in my life. Shout out to Bishop Franklin Hobbs and everything he is and stands for, and all of his 12 children and 30 some odd grandkids. Be fruitful and multiply. And so as I got to my late teens and started to journey into college, right, and I went to Florida A&M University, Yeah, I had to do
Hashtag March.
that. I started to understand that there was more to my religion, more to Christianity than I had even known for myself. Somebody introduced me to the fruitages of the Spirit. And
Ooh,
so
that's a good
that's something you should absolutely Google. If you are a Christian and you do not have a firm grip of the fruitages of the Spirit, there's something missing in terms of how you're piecing it together, because that's the part that ties in Jesus into the Bible.
You just thought it was the Beatitudes.
That's not it,
It's not.
And so as I started to dig into those fruitages, I was challenged with finding people within my belief system that dug deeply on them all, that got into things like how to love your neighbor, that got deep into the aspects of the way you show love for yourself is the way that you show love to others, right? Those things in terms of like do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Precisely.
But really digging into it. What I did find in my collegiate years was a whole bunch of people who were digging into these things using completely other structures. Come to find out, those structures were the structures that we came here with. And when I say came here, I mean came to this hemisphere of the world. Like, this was the stuff that we were creating and thinking about
15,000 years ago.
15,000 years ago.
And also gave us the basis for binary.
Gave us the old schools and filtration systems.
Yeah, exactly, right?
All of these things came from structures that people believed in.
Yeah, but specifically E5, like the calorie readings?
That's
Ones and zeros.
Ones and zeros. That's it. And I wasn't trying to go that deep.
My bad. That was 1,000.
But I'm getting to that point. So the principles for me came from my choice of religion. What I chose to use as my structure gives me principles, built-in frameworks, then gives me principles, individual frameworks. I'm talking stuff that is only relevant to me. Like, it ain't for you, it ain't for JD. It's stuff that I must do, or I will be held accountable, not only in the spiritual realm, but in this lifetime as well. And so that for me was big. I needed something that would snatch my neck, right? Other than myself, something that would be like, look, little youngin, nah, you're not gonna act that way, and take things from me and hold me accountable in my belief system, and not just let it all be unto me and what I say, right? And so that's how we got to the principal point of it for me. And then the last part of Rash's question, you might not even get it.
Yes, you gotta scroll up.
I'll find you, love.
Because Manny got
big
one.
things, big things.
Hold on. What practices do you use to ground yourself and combat? That's a new one.
Oh, and moderation. Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful point of moderation. So a lot of the different things that I have done to indoctrinate myself into my religious system involve me having to come to an understanding with what I was raised in. So Christianity. One of the most beautiful points of moderation was when I realized that I did not have to give up my Jesus in order to accept my ancestors. I can still go to church. I can still speak in tongues. I can still shout. I can still diligently read the Bible. And I do, because those that came before me did, and they took that and made it ours. Right. So regardless of what it was created to do, regardless of what it did, once we got our hands on it and we did what we do, it became something that I need to be respectful of and show admiration to, because of those that came before me, because I would not be here if it was not for them. So this is not an either or. This is a yes and for me when it comes to moderation.
Yeah.
All right. So, Amanda Tuckage.
Well, before that, I know Manny dropped one, and it was in regards to blah, 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 blah. How do we maintain, there we go, anger, frustration, and overall energy during our current social climate? And that actually ties into, the Tuckage one, actually, which had something to do with compassion.
What practices do you use to ground yourself in self-compassion?
Same question.
When have you historically been hard on yourself? Shout out to Amanda Tuckage. Tuckzilla in the place. I love you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna dip and dive and handle both, because that's pretty much how I do everything. So for one, I think that temperature check and body scans daily. And I can tell when time has gone by and I've been off my gene, so to speak, because I'm more reactive to things, and when I allow myself to speak from places of pure emotion, as opposed to addressing situations and letting people know how I feel about it. And that does make a difference. And I found, like, for me, I talk very reckless when I'm in an emotionally compromised state. So it's in my best interest to stay as zen as possible. And that's, ironically enough, back to structure, back to like Bushido code, because I'm a hardcore samurai lover. And the idea of not coming down on people out of anger, because you're supposed to hold yourself to a different standard. Yeah. Right? With regard to the social climate, I think back to Tuck's question, with regard to like grounding yourself, that's a major detail for me. Whether that be feet to raw earth, whether that be, I'm a kinesthetic, so some type of movement. Just as a fire sign, there's already an abundance of warrior energy.
Just sitting right here.
Just sit like for no reason. 3 a.m, ready to go. So I have to make sure that I ground myself in doing something that's actually very soft and feminine in the morning. Exactly. That's not necessarily like an innuendo towards my wife, but that does happen too. But most like beginning my day with devotion and gratitude in some way, shape, or form. Whether that be like actually making food. I do a healthy bit of cooking in the house because for me it's arts and crafts. I get to create something, and the act of like chopping or mixing stuff allows me to like mellow out. And that's one way that I do it.
That's it. I would add, but I think we're coming up on time, and we do want to get to these questions. How do you go about the process of reevaluation if your principles/beliefs have had more of a negative impact than a positive impact on your life? I love it when people answer their questions in their questions.
Yes.
So the way I do that is by constantly reevaluating what this thing means to me. If a principle or a belief is not serving me, it is on the chopping block. Likely, it's a principle or a belief that came from something I think or something I feel. One thing that I can say for certain is any belief or principle that has come from discernment, meaning it came down and it was a download for me, it has been immutable, meaning it has not changed.
It's literally already done.
And it has not negatively impacted me. Now, there is a difference between pain and negative impact. Inherently, pain comes with growth.
That's why they're called growing pains and not growing massages.
My favorite quote: comfort is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. So if you are experiencing pain, you are actually growing. Negative is when you are experiencing something that is making you feel more than pain. It is making you feel loss of something that you were not supposed to lose. Pain can come with loss. Sometimes that is a positive thing. But let's say, for example, you lose your job. Could be positive, could be negative. Depends on you and how much you have the ability to scan yourself and your environment to determine, what did this job really mean to me? Was it something that I was beholden to? Was I tethered to this job? Do I need this job because I can't find another one? Well, if I can't find another one, why is that my ceiling? These are tough questions. Most of the stuff that we dig into here, while we make it seem light and fluffy, again, it's because we do this every single day. But it is not easy stuff.
It's very muddy.
This is the stuff that, like, be ready to be in a ball on your floor crying for hours. Be ready to be walking down the street and be emotionally triggered and have to stop because you need space to heal yourself in that moment. This is real shit when it comes to how to become a full human being.
So you're giving birth to the new version of yourself, and anyone who's witnessed or undergone a birth, it's a very ugly process. And pivoting to Malik's question, the answer: if there were no mid-Atlantic slave trade, would we be invited to Christianity? So I hear that. I'm gonna finish up my last bit and then I'm gonna swing. So
we need no invitation.
Exactly, we really didn't. That being said, finishing up my point regarding to the last bit, I think we're in a space now where much of the upheaval that we see is because there are people who are ready for growth, coming into direct static with those who don't want things to change because they're comfortable. So we're shaking the leaves off the tree. I think the pain that we're experiencing as a global society right now is something that's absolutely essential, not because all of us need to suffer necessarily, but because of the resistance, ironically enough, so that greater than opposite reaction needs to occur for like the forward movement
to actually take place.
Pivoting to Malik and with that forward movement, with or without the mid-Atlantic slave trade, there would have been Black Christians because there was no Suez Canal. So, like, people in the Horn of Africa were the first Black Christians.
Yep. Carbon dating shows us that the oldest Christian churches were found in Ethiopia.
Facts.
So, when you look at it from that perspective, Christianity is ours. So, the whole thing of what we did with it during the Civil Rights Movement, 40s, 50s, 60s, what have you, we was just saying Coke and some stuff that
we were just bringing it back.
Bring it right back around.
Things got lost.
And so that's the easiest way to frame it. There's of course a lot more, right? Because this is still talking Christianity as a religion
and a financial institution.
I didn't go there. But yes, as a financial institution and not the Old and New Testament of the Bible, which is technically supposed to be the principles of the religion. That's a different conversation.
Well, let's get into the finances because like Old Testament, Torah, Talmud. New Testament is sort of like a remix.
Money.
Exactly, yeah. Like that was next Friday. Exactly.
Yo, we are well over time.
Facts.
But thank y'all so much for joining in. If we did not get to your questions, we'll jump into the comments where we see them and answer them for you. Or most of y'all got our phone numbers because, like, we real people. You can holler at me on the street if you see me. But be mindful in moderation.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for coming through once again.
I'm here. I said, yeah.
We gonna be here next week.
Same bad time.
Same bad channel, y'all. Peace and love.
Peace and love. Please go in peace. Unless somebody challenges you with something else. But that's another conversation.